Welcome to Inflection Points. Join hosts Carla Guzzetti and Tim Harrison as we explore Extreme's vision of the infinite enterprise. We see a world where people have become infinitely distributed around the globe, which means businesses must work at scale and focus increasingly on becoming consumer-centric to connect with each and every one of them. Carla, I've been accused of it, but would you like to live in an alternate reality?
Would I like to live in an alternate reality? I think it depends on the day. I can say that I am dying to live in an alternate reality. I think my reality is pretty well tuned as it is, but I could definitely see the appeal. I think I really struggle as to whether or not alternate realities are going to be really adopted en masse. People really are going to want that on the day to day. But then again, I could just be showing my age.
Well, then we won't talk about mine. But yeah, so I mean, when we look at alternate realities, we have the opportunity of VR today, right? The virtual reality, and we have the opportunity of augmented reality. And I personally see those as two different things, not just technology-wise, but just applicability-wise for people and for users and for the experience. You know, virtual reality being very much a contained experience and an event-driven experience versus augmented reality, which is adding data and technology to your daily life to get more out of it, I would guess. You know, that's how I look at it, and maybe it's the old man in me, but I'm still trying to figure out how these work together and what they bring to the experience.
Right. I agree. I think that there's probably clear need for augmented reality. I could definitely see the benefits of being able to, you've ever been at that cocktail party, you've forgotten someone's name. You're like, what are they on Facebook?
Story of my life. Yeah.
So
not at cocktail parties, but just forgetting names.
That could come in handy. But, I kind of wonder, are we building technology for technology's sake, or are we building technology because people actually want it? Do we really want to build another universe? Is there a need to build another universe? Should we do it just because we can? Or are we going to do it because it's actually going to be adding something to our lives, making our lives easier? And which is really, at the heart of everything with the infinite enterprise, is to make things more consumer centric, and so that we can have a better existence that is more tailored to what we're looking for wherever we are. We don't have to go to have that tailored experience in a specific place. So I kind of just grapple with, do we really need this?
That's such a great question, though. That is such a great question. When is this technology for technology's sake? I mean, that's been sort of the history of technology has been people building stuff because they can. But why? And do we need it? And what does it bring to us? And how does it affect our lives? I think that's a huge question. And when we look at virtual reality, and when we look at augmented reality and the history of those technologies, have they been focused on delivering something for the user other than entertainment or an event-based experience? And are we ready for that kind of thing to actually be integrated into our lives? These are amazing questions, Carla.
Yeah. Well, and also true to form, we've brought someone on the podcast that's going to be able to help us with that, because as we know, you and I are not the experts in this, but we do have a lot of questions, and we're going to ask them to Adam Price, who is the head of sales for Gravit8 Software, a UK-based firm that focuses entirely on AR and VR technology and use cases, both today and tomorrow. I'm really excited to see what he has to say, because I want to talk to someone who thinks about this all the time.
Yeah, me too. This is a great opportunity for us to put those questions to somebody who can hopefully answer them and make us understand how this is going to change the world going forward.
Adam, there's so much to unpack around what's happening with AR and virtual reality right now. And it seems that your company is at the forefront of all of this. So can you walk us through a little bit about what your company is doing? And also, we've heard that you've had this massive amount of success and this huge popular ultra modern house that your company has rebuilt. And I'm dying to hear more, because I'm kind of crazy about what's going to be happening in the future with houses. I want to know what's in the ultra modern house.
Yeah, of course. So Gravit8 is the company that I work for, and I'm head of sales there. Being head of sales for Gravit8 doesn't necessarily depend on selling. It's more about understanding technology and explaining to people how that works so that we can bring it to the marketplace. Yeah. So what Gravit8 does is it buys the latest technology, part of that being augmented reality equipment, virtual reality equipment. And we kind of have a group of 25 developers that just play around with this stuff and see what we can do. So we're really experimenting with the latest technology. Now, the people that buy this from us would be large corporations or brands, and they use this in events, exhibitions, experience centers, visitor centers, those kind of interactives. So really, they come to us when they want to know what's the latest tech, what can they do with it, and then what's the craziest thing that we can do with it. So we do a lot of things that people haven't seen before, haven't tried before. It's kind of a developer's nightmare. So we're quite lucky. Yeah, we're lucky to have the team that we do. They're an experimental bunch. We like research and development. And we're really fortunate to work with some very big brands that recognize our capabilities and allow us to kind of play with these things and bring them into the market, because it's quite a high risk thing for a brand to do that. So the big house then, the big house was born of an idea from, there's quite a large event in London called the Ideal Home Show. Mm-hmm. And in the UK, we're absolutely crackers about DIY, doing our houses up, buying the latest tech and gizmos to put in our house as well. And there's some quite sought after designers that design furniture or furnishings to go inside these houses. Now, at the Ideal Home Show, what they do is they have a huge house that's built, a physical house that they build. And then all of these designers from around the world will come and install their furniture. And this is the first time that people get an opportunity to really see these things in situ and touch and feel them. Mm-hmm. And it might be a fridge, it might be a cooker, it might be a couch, curtains, you name it. There's all sorts of things. Samsung put the latest fridge in there for the first time then. So people queue to see this, and the queues can get up to an hour and a half to 2 hours long at times for people to actually get into this house. Wow. And this was quite a problem because they found that the queue kind of got to a certain length and kind of stopped there. So what they knew is, not everybody's getting round. And there was a few people that said, we really would have loved to see the house, but we didn't want to spend 2 hours in a queue. So they wanted to create a virtual version of that. So what we did is we took the initial designs of the house and we took each room, and we had a guy who was on stage who was a presenter, and he was wearing a virtual reality headset, and he stood on a physical stage in front of an audience. But rather than the audience watching him, they put on a virtual headset themselves. So they had a virtual reality headset. I believe we had up to 60 people sat in the audience, and we had the guy on stage presenting. And as soon as you put the headset on, you could see the guy on the stage, but it was a virtual version of him. Cool. And if you kind of remember the Matrix, when I think Neo says we need guns, and all the gun racks kind of come flying in. It's like that, but it was fridges and couches and curtains instead.
I need a couch.
Yeah, lots of people couches. Ducking and dodging, trying to avoid oncoming fridges.
Exactly. So the audience can see, and rather than coming from the side, it kind of came from oblivion, from the ceiling above. So then it would land, and the furniture would land, and the presenter would then talk them through the technology that was in that room, talk them through. There was things like Lego walls, rather than kids using Lego on the floor, that build things on the walls. And there was a camera system for older people to be able to communicate with the younger folk in the house and things like that. So there was all sorts of technology that was in there. But I think what amazed me is I've never seen so many, the demographic that go to shows on certain days, you're kind of talking between 70 to 90. So this is the first time that these people have used virtual reality. And for somebody like that, it's a long way from them watching their TV soap, which is about as advanced as technology gets for them, to sticking on a VR headset. And they loved it. They kept it on the whole time. It was a 20-minute presentation. It got to the end and they're kind of flipping these goggles off and looking next door at Mavis and saying, wow, this was awesome. So this, I think, and that stems back a little bit to virtual reality and adaptation of it. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but people haven't historically been ready for it. But that the demographic of people that used it for that particular event proves that anybody can use VR. It's not for your nephew or your kids. It's for anybody these days.
That's really interesting. When I think about VR, I think of I don't know, the film Hackers in 1990 or something like that, and the guy standing in this circular thing with these giant goggles on, and he's attacking whatever. I'm guessing that VR has changed significantly since that time. What has been the driver over the past 30 years to change from that sort of very isolated use case to 70-year-olds sitting in an audience having this experience? What has been the driver?
So there's many drivers, and I think we're at a point now where those drivers are all converging to a bit of an epicenter for VR and AR to take off, if you like. And if you think about the very first example of VR, it was in 1957, and it was by a chap called Morton Heilig, and he created a kind of a station where you'd put your face into this 3D video recorded car journey. I feel like it was kind of a desert buggy, but it had the smell of the desert, it had vibrations, it had sounds, and you had that 3D effect. And that really is the very first version of virtual reality that we saw. But this was it had to be kind of pulled around in a vehicle, and then you'd sit in it. So size is a big thing. And if you think back to the very first versions of modern VR that you think of, they're almost huge buckets that you put on your head, and the actual the video equipment, the lenses that they had in there, and the screens that they had in there meant that people got a lot of motion sickness as well. So that was a big challenge for people to overcome. You had to have quite a sturdy stomach to sit on a roller coaster ride in virtual reality, which is what they seem to do a majority of people actually. I think most people that have tried it for the first time have said, I hate it, it makes me feel sick. I said, well, yeah, you were thrust onto a roller coaster. That's probably why.
Yeah, it might feel that same way in reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's the size. It's the size that has been a problem historically. You think of the cables that you need to connect it to. You're tethered to a very powerful PC historically as well. And the equipment was mega expensive. I know when I first started using virtual reality, that the equipment that we used was in excess of £5,000 or £6,000 for one user. And really, you were massively limited by what software you could use to develop as well. So our developers back then had to have a real understanding of VR. You couldn't really associate it with any other type of development. It was a very specific kind of development. So what's now happened from a development perspective as well is standard game engines can be used to develop the software for virtual reality now. And you look at Unity and Unreal engines, they probably produce more than 95% of virtual reality applications now. And that could be somebody who's been to study game engines at university, and they can easily turn that into a virtual reality application. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that we do nowadays, we build it not to be used in VR. And if somebody says, can you use it in VR? And you kind of think, yeah, we could quite easily make that work in VR. And the two work hand in hand now. So there's the development has got much easier. The equipment has got less bulky. There's another very human trait that we need to consider here as well, and it's adaptation and adaptation, if you like. People actually wanting to use this. Yep. The first VR headset that I remember seeing must have had a geek factor of like 9. And bearing in mind, if you've got a geek factor of 2 or 3, you're going to struggle to find a girlfriend or boyfriend. That's kind of how the geek factors work.
Tim can relate.
I can relate. Yep.
So you were up there with somebody sees that on you. It's so unusual. It's so different. It's so kind of space age Star Trek that it really, you felt a bit of a fool wearing the equipment. And I know that a lot of people that had offered to have a go were just genuinely embarrassed. They didn't want to wear it in front of their partners or colleagues because they were embarrassed to actually wear the equipment. Whereas now people and wearables are becoming, they look cooler, they're getting smaller, but also I think people are just more happy to put a device on these days because, we wear headphones to make calls, we wear kind of earbuds Bluetooth headsets used to be a laughable thing as well, but now you can kind of quite happily wear those as well. So
wearables are a lot more popular than they used to be, right? I mean, now you can wear a ring that tracks what your blood pressure is going to be, and obviously with Fitbit and Apple Watch and everything, it's become commonplace, right?
It's so much. It's fashionable to have a watch. I think I've seen friends and family sat talking about their $400 smartwatch, and there's somebody sat across the way with a $12,000 Rolex, and nobody has a conversation about that watch because it's not as interesting. Whereas I think historically that would have been a real talking point. So technology is becoming more interesting. It's starting to do clever things. The user cases that you have for it, because it's easier to develop, there's more things that you can do with it. Technology isn't really anything unless it's got a user case. It needs to have a reason to be there. You can have the coolest tech in the world, and there's loads of examples of that, but there's no real user case for it. Actually,
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I've been wanting to ask you as you've been talking about all the use cases is, we talk a lot about the idea of the infinite enterprise on the podcast, and how, the pandemic has really shifted how people are using technology every day, and it's accelerated the adoption of technology. I was wondering if, obviously you can't disclose anything your team is currently working on, but how have the conversations with the brands that you work with changed as a result of the pandemic? Are you seeing new use cases come in, or new questions? Where are your clients thinking about how AR and VR can help them in the future? So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, that's a great question, because the pandemic has had a huge impact on the events industry specifically. But from a corporate perspective, the face-to-face communication that people were so very familiar with having, that was so impactful and important to their business and customer relations, were all based around meetings, getting together face-to-face, that it was a sudden instant change that withdrew all of that. And we had to adapt overnight, literally, to speaking to one another on a screen. And I dare say if we had this, did this podcast the way that we are now, face to face 2 years ago, it would feel very different. It'd feel more alien, but actually it's much easier to settle into a conversation using a digital somebody else these days than it used to be. So people are much more familiar and prepared to talk digitally to somebody. And what that does, that opens up, I think, people's minds that potentially could have been a little bit bigoted, dare I say, to that form of communication. Yeah. And actually, if you think about using virtual reality and using augmented reality in a way that you can communicate with people, then I will happily talk about a project that we're currently working on that's in kind of beta phase, if you like. We've designed I want to say it's like a floating UFO in the sky, and it's a virtual place. And we have our morning meetings in there sometimes. And what we can do is we can go into the room and put my VR headset on. And then all of a sudden someone will ping up to the left of me, and it's an avatar, and that might be Sam, one of our developers. And then another guy will pop up, that'll be Disky, our head of development, will pop over in the corner. So we can physically see these people in a meeting room. And we're using spatial audio to talk to one another. So you understand where people are based on where the conversation is coming from, but also it's tracking their hands so you can see their hand gestures. And what we can do is we can upload documents or videos prior to the meeting happening, and they appear on the desk as little clipboards. So you kind of pick up a clipboard and you look for the one that you want, which is based on a thumbnail, and you go, and then you fling it to someone with zero gravity, and it floats across the table. They grab it, and then they can tap on it, and it's either a PDF or it's a video, and you can talk about that thing while it's playing. And then, of course, we've got rubber ducks and tennis balls that you can just throw at each other for the fun of it. It's all physics tested, of course, which is why we do that.
That feels very real, actually.
We're kind of historically, we're well known in our office for having kind of sudden bursts of Nerf darts flying in every direction.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's where that stemmed from.
Can I take you down a path that sort of helps me understand how this is applicable and for whom it's applicable? We've talked a lot about VR. There's also AR as a subset, maybe, or a different journey along that particular path. I've always assumed or presumed that VR is more of a stationary, in your home kind of experience. And as you're talking about doing meetings, we're not necessarily walking around outside doing those meetings. And to me, AR feels a little bit more mobile, if you will, more traveled, shall we say. Who are these designed for? Are you designing for those who are in their home office but not necessarily traveling beyond the home office? Is there an AR part of that experience when they leave the home office? Help me understand how these apply and who those users are and what their profile might be like.
Yeah, of course. So we're very much on, I think, an event horizon for augmented reality. We're kind of tipping down the void where it will become part of everyday life. When you move much, much further into the future, augmented reality will be the way that the mind works. And, that's quite an extreme view. But actually, if we can talk about the far future later on, if you like.
Yes, please.
Yes.
But if we talk about the immediate future and where augmented reality will be going in the next few years, Apple, Google, majority of the large kind of manufacturers, Intel, Bosch, all of these manufacturers have been working on an equipment that we're now able to deliver relatively cheap, relatively quickly. Things like battery lives are improving, screens are improving. The way that we can use them, we can slip on a pair of glasses that would not be too dissimilar to yours, Tim, and you'd be able to sit and have a conversation with somebody and use augmented reality without the other person knowing you're using it. So you might be, I don't know if you're like me, quite often somebody will say a word and I don't understand what that word means, and I'll secretly sneak off to the side, type it in, and then I can continue the conversation. So an example would be that augmented reality, you'd be able to have that conversation with somebody and use your eye movement to look back, that's using voice recognition to pick up a word and look at that word and then understand it and then continue the conversation without ever moving your hands or having any other kind of physical contact with anything. So that's kind of where AR will go quite soon. And we're talking within the next two years or so that we'll have that equipment available to us at a relatively simple price point. That means when you get a phone contract, you get a pair of glasses with it as well, and the two work hand in hand. We're quite close to that now. So how do we use that in the kind of industry that I work in? A lot of what we use in our industry is helping people understand a product or a service. So corporations want to be able to demonstrate in the best way possible how a product or a service works. So I've got a product that will be launching an augmented reality product in hopefully February this year, coming up at an event for quite a large manufacturer of heavy machinery. And what they want to do is they want to use screens, movable screens on arms, to use as an X-ray to look through a vehicle. And that vehicle will then have the workings underneath and you'll be able to see. And we've actually done this. We did this with a jet engine for GE about 10 years ago. And we're looking to do this now with a vehicle. And I think the difference these days is that we can do that with a screen on an arm. But give me 2 years and people will just walk up to that stand. They'll already have the equipment. The infrastructure will already be in place. The kind of languages and the protocols that are needed to mean that it works everywhere will be in place, so that someone can just walk on that stand with their glasses on and see straight through that vehicle without holding the screen or without picking up a device. AR will be a thing that exists in front of you all the time and you have access to it. And people can develop content and place it in a geolocation so that it works right there without you ever having to physically visit that place. So that's how it will change my industry.
That's really awesome. Obviously we know about Google Glass and perhaps some of the challenges it faced when it came out, and people's privacy concerns and such. Do you think ubiquitousness of technology will overcome that concern in the next couple of years? Because that's a huge jump to get from reticence to adoption, and then what that opens up could be potentially huge going forward for the next 5 to 10 years and beyond.
100%. And I think there's a big driver for this. We've just been through a pandemic, which is a viral pandemic. In my opinion, there's another pandemic happening, and it's a productivity pandemic. And people are absolutely trying to do everything they can to make productivity, maximize productivity. And technology is a gateway to that. And augmented reality is a huge gateway to that as well, allowing people immediate access to information. Humans have a terrible bandwidth issue. We've got our long-term and short-term memory, and that's pretty much all we've got. And then we've got our thumb. And then at the end of our thumb is all of the information you would ever want. But you got to use your thumb, and depending on how fast you can type or speak to your device depends on how quick that information comes to you. And people are getting tired of that. Smartphones have been improving over the last 10, 15 years, and they've seen huge steps, but those steps are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the reason that they can only go so far is you've got to use your hand. You've got to use your hand to type, or you've got to use your voice to speak. And we need a new way to interface with technology. We need a better way to be able to grab data when we need it. And augmented reality, the use of our eyes, tracking our eyes to open menus, select menus, is in the future going to be a much quicker way of doing that. And Bosch are working on some laser technology now that kind of detects where the pupil is. So you can start to use the pupil as a mouse cursor, if you like, and you can use blinking as a left click or a right click. And that's kind of one way of doing it now. But if you've ever used VR, quite often you can just look and stare at something, and a little circle appears. And when the circle gets full, then it knows that you've selected it. So you can just stare at something to select it as well. So you think of the way that Apple produced all of the haptic, they tried to make the thumb much quicker, haptic slide up left and right. And I'm an Android user, and every time I pick up my wife's phone to try and do something, I'm genuinely feel like I'm doing some origami just to open a file because I don't necessarily use the Apple infrastructure. So Google Glass was a failure. Google Glass was ahead of its time. It just came out too early. It also had limitations because of battery life, power, kind of the vision that you got from it. It was quite a rush to bring it to market. And Apple have now are bringing a product out in the next few years, which they've cleverly called Apple Glass, believe it or not.
Of course they have. Marketing.
Hey, listen, that demographic loves it, and they'll buy it. And
that would be me, actually. So just
exactly.
Yeah,
and that's the point. The demographic does love it. The demographic will buy it, and that's going to be the driver. And what's driving people to want that is that if you can have a better digital experience by wearing them, then you're onto a winner. And there's all sorts of user cases that will give people much better experiences in the future as well.
So moving from that, the motion of a thumb, which takes time and effort and energy, to the 13 milliseconds it takes for the eye to process an image, and then the action of the muscle therein, is a significant driver. The ability to just move faster and to be able to do things in a more natural way than necessarily having to learn these gestures and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's actually a very small step forwards, and there's a much bigger step on the horizon, which is something that Elon Musk's team are working on at the moment called Neuralink. Mm-hmm. And Neuralink will eventually provide a direct pathway to the brain for digital content, which is mind-blowing stuff right now, but in the future it will be a choice that you will be able to afford.
I think this is, and you're leading me to what is, unfortunately we're getting out of time, but you're leading me to what our biggest question, because you dangled it before and you teased us and you said, I know what's going to be happening in the future. So Adam, what is happening? You talked about what's happening in the immediate future, but I want to know about Neuralink and beyond.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is our day-to-day going to look like in 30 years, 50 years?
Yeah, very interesting. So artificial intelligence is something that you hear a lot of these days. Machine learning, deep learning is something we hear a lot of. But we see it influential in choosing which people go into power. Artificial intelligence had a huge part to play in that. Mm-hmm. This is the very beginnings of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence at the moment is on a very exponential curve of becoming more intelligent. And by 2029, the most intelligent being in the world will be a machine. And by 2045, machine learning will be 1 billion times more intelligent than humans are. Now, that's the difference between Einstein and a fly. So if you think about how intelligent AI will be, we don't understand yet what AI will produce and create. But we do know that it will start doing it, because it's already started procreating itself and procreating code and methods in which enable it to learn faster and move quicker. Yeah. And the developers that created AI don't understand how it learns and how it procreates and how it does it. So it is already its own entity in its own being. So a combination of artificial intelligence and a combination of Neuralink and digital pathways to the brain will develop essentially a hybrid or android future for humanity, which will mean that the likes of augmented reality, you won't need to wear anything because your brain will almost superimpose those images onto your own vision, if you like.
So I'm going to be as smart as Data from Star Trek, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, and it will be a choice soon. I mean, Neuralink, if you look at what they've done some very basic things. They've implanted a Neuralink into a pig, and when the pig smells something it likes, it beeps, which seems like a very unusual. But the very first user cases of Neuralink that will be that people who have lost the use of limbs through nerve damage will be able to use those arms again. Yeah, so there's some amazingly good things that will happen for it, but it also opens up a gateway into a future in combination with artificial intelligence that will seems very scary to a lot of people, and to a degree should be. But actually, it means that the use of this is where VR and AR is taking us. It's augmented means to enhance. That's its original origin comes from Latin, and it means to enhance, or late French. And that's what augmented reality does. You'll be able to walk down a street without using your nav, and it'll tell you to turn left. And you'll be able to look through a shop window, see a product, buy it, and it'll be delivered to your house without having the use of anything. And artificial intelligence will start to understand you, your habits, what you want to do, and it'll start to feed you information that's relevant to you. So AI will kind of help shape what your future is as well. Individually, every person will have their own kind of things that they like.
So singularity will become the merging of what was virtual reality, but becomes part of our actual reality at some point in the near future, towards the end of this decade, you're saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, machine learning already, every single task that we give to AI, already it's better than humans at every single one of them. There is no task that's been given to AI that a human is better than at. Eventually, it always defeats us. So what we will see certainly in the next few years is the likes of navigation, being able to buy seamlessly by using your eye and using augmented reality. And then I think what you will start to see over the next 10 years is artificial intelligence will start to create content in the same way that developers do, but it will just be available on the network and you will be allowed to access it. And there will be no corporation in control of that. It will just start to appear and you will be allowed to use it in the same way that you can use WhatsApp or any other app. AI will make things available to us that we can use.
Well, what terrifies me is my ability to look at something and purchase it. So we'll have to put some limits on the technology. But Adam, this has been absolutely fantastic. My eyes are open digitally and virtually and in reality towards what the value is and the benefits are and what the future looks like. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. This is quite augmented and revolutionary. So thank you so much.
No problem at all.
So that's a lot to unpack.
It is, yeah.
Adam gave us a lot to think about. But the thing that stuck with me is that he said that the thing that he gets asked about is, what is the craziest thing out there that your company can build? What's the craziest piece? And the reason why that stuck with me and why it triggered me is it made me think that if we're looking at this technology within the context of the infinite enterprise and being adopted at scale, if somebody's asking you what's the craziest thing you can do, it means that we're not really ready to adopt it on the day to day.
Yeah.
Right. If they're just looking at it still as for massive events or one-offs, we're not thinking about how is this applicable every day, and the consumers are not ready for this yet. We're not ready to have AR and VR every single day. What do you think?
I think that's really insightful. I think the other part of that, and maybe we look at this as sort of a diversion between AR and VR, is that VR is very event driven and maybe not as ubiquitous or at scale, whereas AR, augmented reality, is very much the potential for at scale. Like it takes us out anywhere we want to be. It comes with us. It adds to our ability to perceive the world around us. us. And I think that there's a significant element of the infinite enterprise in there, and that it's consumer centric. We're actually looking at the world from our perspective and getting the information that we want that's relevant to us. We also have the ability to do that anywhere. So we've got networks at scale that can support this kind of use case. I think that's really important as well. We may not be as comfortable with it, but I think the technology itself is very much an infinite enterprise type of technology. I definitely have my concerns about the adoption of AR, and I'm very interested in how that can augment us. My initial reaction, I think, is that there's more challenge in societal acceptance of AR than there is with VR. VR, you get a bunch of people in a room, they put on goggles, they have an experience, it's fun. Whether you're sitting at home by yourself wearing these goggles, or you're sitting in a room with other people and you're having this VR experience, there's an acceptance of that. It's okay. But wandering about on the street with glasses on, perhaps, as you and I both are spectacle wearers, with the ability to see additional information or take pictures, we know that there have been other technologies that didn't quite meet up to user expectations or societal expectations before. So the technology is supported. Do we want it, and do we feel comfortable with that? And are we collectively, you and I, too old to experience that kind of feeling?
Never. But I would say one thing I want to point out that you just said is that there are societal cues in the difference between VR and AR right now, right? VR, someone's got big goggles, you're blocking out the sun, you know what's happening. There's a whole bunch of people in the room. That is clear. People know you're in a virtual reality. AR, to your point, there have been some failed technology in the past that didn't have quite the adoption rate. And it's because as a society, we were uncomfortable with what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. If someone's going to be taking a picture of me, I at least have the opportunity to catch them holding up their iPhone. Whereas if they're wearing glasses, how do I know what they're doing behind that? Particularly if I myself have not engaged with that technology, if it's not ubiquitous, if we haven't all agreed on exactly what's going to be the use case. So I agree with you. I think that we'll probably see AR catch on a lot faster, but I actually think that VR might actually ramp up very quickly. If I was going to put out a hypothesis, if I was going to be a betting woman, as we continue to try to be further apart from each other, but still get that in-person experience on the day-to-day, I think VR might actually have a place in the business world. There's a use case for virtual reality. I think that is going to emerge.
I think that's very fair. My comfort level aside, I think you're right. I think the ability to overcome some of the current pressures we have in the business world, VR does address those, and I think Adam's company has done a great job in being able to show how that can be done. I think over the long term, AR will win out. Perhaps, because I think we still need to have that human element, but it may take some significant effort, or even a generational change for society to accept AR, and for that to become something that is ubiquitous.
Well, and I think there's a word that we're dancing around, and I think probably people are waiting for us to say it, which is metaverse. But we're not talking about the metaverse yet. I think this is the metaverse we are going to talk about later on. And it's a huge idea for us to think about and talk through. And we haven't talked about it here because I think the relevancy of AR and VR lead into the conversation about metaverse.
I agree. Yeah, I think this is fundamentals for us to be able to talk about that. So I look forward to getting into that further. It'll be yet more fear for the old man, but I think it'll be a great conversation to have, and we'll start to really understand why people are asking these questions about the metaverse.
I can't wait to see how much more uncomfortable we can make you.
Fantastic. Join us for our next episode of Inflection Points, where we talk about how cloud technologies are the fundamental building blocks for future business. Can cloud change your life? Episodes drop every other Wednesday. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.